This week, transcripts of closed-door testimony detailed how the president and his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, along with the support of administration officials, pressured the government of Ukraine to investigate the Bidens and the 2016 election. Witnesses testified that those efforts were linked to critical security assistance needed by Ukraine to combat Russian aggression, essentially a quid pro quo, which the president has repeatedly denied. Joining us tonight, Cheryl Gay Stolberg, congressional correspondent for The New York Times, Jeff Zeleny, senior Washington correspondent for CNN, Anita Kumar, White House correspondent and associate editor for Politico, and Josh Dawsey, White House reporter for The Washington Post. In transcript after transcript, Giuliani's role was pivotal. As Josh reports, quote, top officials needed to cater to him. And Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, said in his testimony, quote, Rudy had some bad issues with Ukraine, and until Rudy was satisfied, the president wasn't going to change his mind. Josh, when you open your notebook, what does your reporting show?
Well, time after time this week, Giuliani's name came up more than 500 times in various witness testimony. And what essentially was a nexus, as the president's frustrated with Ukraine and these various officials of the State Department, ambassadors, top folks in Pompeo's orbit, all understand if we don't pacify Rudy Giuliani, the president's not going to be happy. And they're all reluctant. They're reticent to do this. They're not necessarily thrilled about working with an outside personal lawyer who has the portfolio of Ukraine. But they all wanted to mollify him. They all wanted to convince him, to appease him, because he said without Rudy being happy, the president's not going to meet with the Ukrainian president, the president's not going to have a phone call, the president's not moving forward until Rudy convinces him that these concerns have been alleviated. So what we saw in every witness this weekend, they said, you have to talk to Rudy. Rudy needs to approve this. What does Rudy think? We've got to set up meetings for Rudy. So Rudy serves as the president's outside lawyer, but when it came to Ukraine, Rudy was a key player in all of this.
Inside the White House, was anyone countering Rudy Giuliani in this alleged rogue foreign policy?
Well, you have heard a lot of people now saying that the president should get rid of Rudy Giuliani. And at the time, I don't think people understood the extent of his role. I mean, that's one of the things that we're hearing from this testimony is that people didn't really get it. It was a small circle of people, a lot of them career people, not political people, didn't feel like they could come up and say anything about it. But now, since it's been coming out, you've been saying a lot of people saying to the president, please, it's time to cut ties with him. He is not doing anything good for you. And the president has resisted.
Why has he resisted?
Well, they've had this long history together, the two of them, both from New York. They've known each other forever. I do think that at this point, though, with people like Mick Mulvaney, his chief of staff, and Rudy Giuliani, they know so much about this. They are sort of in it together.
Mick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, Cheryl, you had Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, his testimony released, along with Fiona Hill, two top staffers on the National Security Council, implicating Mulvaney in all of this with Giuliani in this attempted quid pro quo.
Right, so and that gets things very, very close to the president, right? There's nobody closer in the White House to the president than the chief of staff, in this case, the acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. And so I think Democrats are really trying to narrow in, if you will. They're trying to get closer and closer and closer and closer to the president to show that he was really behind this. And that's going to be their main challenge. Is they are going to have the burden of proving that it was the president directing this operation. And Republicans feel that they haven't proven that yet, and we're going to hear a lot from Republicans about that.
Josh?
But Mulvaney declined to testify today. He was subpoenaed. He didn't show up. Mulvaney's ally, the OMB director, hasn't shown up. Everyone in Mulvaney's orbit is stonewalling and basically challenging the Democrats. We're not showing up. We think this is a sham process. We're not going to testify. We're not giving you documents. See what you can do. And that's a test for the Democrats as well. If you say, we're not coming, the president puts out a letter and some of these top officials just don't show up, are the Democrats willing to challenge us?
They're gonna pursue a, obstruction. They're gonna use that as evidence of obstruction.
But even if Mulvaney doesn't show up, there's still a lot of evidence on the table.
Right.
There is a lot of evidence. And I think when you step back from all this can be very confusing. As I travel around the country talking to voters, even listening to the developments, it can be confusing. But the point is still this. The transcript, the rough transcript of the call from that July conversation with President Trump and the Ukrainian president, as well as the whistleblowers report, that is still the guiding principle in all of this here. So the facts haven't changed at all. They've been amplified by every bit of testimony from Capitol Hill. And next week, when it goes public, when there are these public hearings, that is what is going to come out. But the reality is, most people, I believe, have made up their minds about this. If you like the president, you do not believe that this is a worthy process. If you don't, you do. But don't get lost in the weeds here. The reality is the president did ask him for that. The question is it impeachable or not?